Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, my mother finally got revenge on her abusive ex with his own paperwork. Job accused me of lying, so I got revenge. They want my money. Oops. Before we get into today's episode, remember to subscribe so you never miss a video. So let's get started. My mother finally got revenge on her abusive ex with his own paperwork. On my throwaway because my little brother knows my normal account and I don't want him to see what we did. This all started several years ago during my parents' divorce, but the revenge took place this November. Backstory: growing up, my father was an emotionally abusive piece of shit who got off of religious authority and controlling every aspect of our lives. We were kept so isolated and made to fear the police, CPS, to the point where we thought it was normal. After I went off to college, my little brother came out as gay and my father started beating him, unbeknownst to my mother and I. When my brother threatened to tell my mom about this, my father kicked the then 15-year-old out of the house. My mother was understandably horrified by this and tried to get my father to see sense, at which point he started hitting her. Long story somewhat short, I got my mom out, my brother went to live with friends, and divorce proceedings were started. It was nasty, no one wanted to go to the police, father was friends with the local small-town cops, and thankfully my asshat sperm donor agreed to a no-fault divorce. While my mom was cleaning out her stuff from the house under the watchful eye of her amazing coworkers, she found my father's discharge papers. This is where the plan started. You see, my father spent his entire 25-year marriage telling everyone that he was a Special Forces vet who had been awarded a Purple Heart and Bronze Star, which were both coincidentally destroyed in a housefire along with all his uniforms and paperwork. But here were his discharge papers and they clearly stated he was given an other than honorable discharge after 4 years in the motor pool. Not wanting to be seen as the vindictive ex-wife, my mom quietly took the papers and didn't tell anyone for years after my father moved away to a new state to join a militia. When she finally told me while tipsy this past year, we hatched a plan. Over the next few months we snooped on social media to make a list of his former and current employers, family, major friends that we knew of, and his new church. She enlisted our extended family and my college friends from all over the country. In November we each purchased Veterans Day cards and wrote out messages such as, "Stolen Valor," "Motor Pool," "Pretender," etc. Everyone attached a photocopy of the page listing his discharge. And then we sent them on the same day from the nearest major cities with the return address listed as his current church. They arrived on or around Veterans Day from Atlanta, Orlando, Washington, D.C., New York, St. Louis, Kansas City, Seattle, Portland, L.A., Houston, Ontario, London, and Edinburgh. Immediately my mother was inundated with calls, emails from people who had no idea, and couldn't believe he would lie like that, and were sorry for not believing her, my brother. My dipshit dad sent a nasty email implying horrible things if he ever could prove my mother did this, which she forwarded straight to her lawyer along with the nasty letters from his more vocal supporters. Now most people in our hometown look at her as the battered spouse who walked out with her head held high rather than that tramp who divorced such a godly man. My little brother has no idea we did this. He didn't want anyone to confront my father, but later told me he got a random call from our old pastor apologizing for kicking him out of the church over my father's lies. And I can finally sleep well at night with the knowledge that his reputation's is in shambles by our hands. Revenge truly is a dish best served cold. They want my money. Oops. This isn't my story, but is the story of a departed uncle, R.I.P. Hodge. Backstory: in World War II, my Uncle Hodge was an engineer with the RAF. He rapidly climbed the ranks and ended up being the head engineer at a local base. After the war, he met his wife of 45 years, Eve. It was the typical post-war relationship, without children though due to complications. He quickly found a job at our village coal mine, known locally as the Pit. He went from engineer to foreman very quickly. The man had a knack for leadership, that's for sure. He and Eve, some of his RAF buddies and his sister, my grandmother, often went to Spain for holidays, at least once per year before they all retired. After that, whenever they felt like it. The family. The unfortunate truth is that family isn't always nice. My grandmother was his only surviving direct family. Eve, on the other hand, had a large family. Very large. The trouble with large families is that often there's a few bad eggs. In this case, it was quicker to count the good ones. As Hodge would put it, the trouble with eggs is, you can only tell the good ones by spinning them quick, or dunking them in water. I don't fancy going to prison. More often than not, Eve's family would drop by and ask to borrow money. Not from Eve, she had none. Hodge had always been industrious, saving as much as he could and only really spending what he had to, other than the holidays of course. The incident. When I hit 18, legal drinking age in the UK, he took me for my first beer, as my dad worked nights and had to sleep. He didn't drink, which was uncommon for him, as he was a regular at the working men's club we were in. Me, Hodge, how come you're not drinking? I can't in good conscience drink your money without you getting a sniff. Hodge. Well, I suppose one can't hurt. Don't tell Nip, his name for my grandmother, Sheila, but I've just been diagnosed with diabetes type 2. Don't want to take any chances, me. I'll keep your secret, but you need to tell her, just on the off chance. Hodge. I'll tell her in good time, kiddo, now get it down you before it goes flat. Neither of us took much notice to the people around us, so we didn't notice Eve's nephew in the corner. 5 years pass, I've seen him a few times, less than I'd like because of work and him going overseas. The build-up. I visited my grandparents one day to find my grandmother sobbing, with Hodge sat on the sofa. Hodge. Put the kettle on, kid, I need to tell you something. I make a coffee for Gran and Granddad, hot chocolate for me and green tea for Hodge. Hodge. Now listen up, I've not got long on this wretched planet, but you're not to cry over me. I've been diagnosed with late-stage cancer, and couldn't be fucking happier to be leaving. To Gran, sorry Nip, I know you don't want to hear this but it has to be said. You and yours will be looked after of course, but you're not to tell Eve and her family. To everyone, I've made up a new will. I want everyone to go to the reading. I've prepared a little gift for the family. Shortly after this chat, we found out he passed away. We kept it from my grandmother that he'd taken his own life, it'd destroy her. Let it be said that Hodge was always a man independent of others. He made his choice so Gran wouldn't suffer seeing him deteriorate over time. The revenge. We went to the reading as a family like he asked. It's the only thing he ever asked of us. We'd seen people we never met, never even heard of, so of course, there were some sullen scowls across the table. Lawyer. Now that we're all here, please watch this video. Hodge has a message for you all. Hodge from beyond. Now then, I imagine this will be a shock to most of you, but I had cancer. If you're watching this, I want you to know that some of you made my last few years pleasant. Others, well, we'll get to you. To my side of the family, not one of you came to me asking if I was alright or wanted anything doing. Instead, you asked if I wanted a hand with anything. For this, I thank you. I've never had anyone do anything for me unless they were my underlings in the RAF, and I didn't aim to start when I found out I was on my way out. You knew me better than most of my close family. I'll tell you if something's wrong. Good on you. Now then, let's get to the good bit. To Eve's family, you lot, where do I begin? When I took our Nip's grandson out for his first pint, apparently the walls have ears and one of you overheard me tell him I had diabetes. Shame you had to say, it's a shame it wasn't cancer. Guess you got your wish, eh? The rest of you, whenever you visited me you asked more often than not if you could borrow money. It's fine, I didn't mind lending it to you, but I did expect to get it back. So, here's how this is going to work. I've split my money and put it in trust with my oldest friend, the lawyer. Nobody is getting a thing till Eve pops her clogs, so don't bother asking. Eve can stay in the house I worked my ass off for until she either dies, or has to go into care for any reason. The house is not to be sold until after she dies. Lazy as she is, she's still my wife. Once she dies, the house is to be sold at a reasonable price to the next owners, and the money from that is to be added to the total for my finances, and split with the family. Eve's is her own and she can do with it what she wants, other than add it to my total. Lawyer has been left instructions on this. Now, here's how it'll be split. If you've borrowed money from me and paid it back, you'll get a fair share based on your age at the time of my death. If you haven't repaid the money you borrowed, you'll still get a cut, minus what you owe me. For some of you, I hope you know I'm laughing at your squirming from beyond the grave. Deserves you right. Nip, my only living family, you'll get the lion's share of whatever is there, to be done with what you will. If you're not wanting to keep it, lawyer has been paid for any services you may require. Trust him, he's a good lad and saved my ass on more than one occasion in the war. Nip's sons will get a decent chunk to help with whatever you need, and your children will be provided for as well. To my mum, not once have I heard anything bad about you. You're getting a cut too, like it or lump it. Op, you've been a great help the last couple of weeks. I called you unfairly at 3 a.m. to help me out of the bath after finally giving up getting myself out. Sorry you had to see that. You didn't have to help the next day with the decorating either. If you weren't already on your career path, you'd make a fine tradesman. You will receive a cut to be determined by the near future's events. Use it how you will. To the rest of you, I'm utterly fucking disgusted to have known you. I mentioned earlier that Eve can live in the house till she dies or is put into residential care. If either of these happens, nobody is to live in the house. I don't want anyone I don't trust in there. Now quit your crying and go about your lives, Hodge. As you can imagine, people kicked up a stink about this. We nodded to the lawyer and left. Shortly after the funeral, Eve went into a retirement home with her own money. Hodges was locked up as per his request. She had more than enough to keep her afloat for many more years. A couple of months down the line, we all got called back to the lawyer's office, a little bemused. Again, we're directed to watch a video. Hodge, I'm not surprised that this video has been played. Some of you just don't follow orders. If you're watching this, it means that someone I don't trust was found to be living in my house. I don't give a fuck who it is. Lawyer has instructions of what to do next. But for the sake of his voice and sanity, whoever was found in the house against my wishes is now stricken from the will entirely. If the others feel they want to share their money with you, that's their loss. You'll not get a penny from me. As it turns out, my cousin, who bullied me in school, and her family, as in her on and off boyfriend, 2 kids and a dog, had moved into the house after convincing Eve to move out because they needed the house. What they hadn't counted on is nosy neighbors. Hodge asked them to watch the house, and if they saw anyone new in there, or any signs of moving, to report to the lawyer for updates. In return, they'd get a cut of the money he had. They're good people. The lesson: don't screw with a war vet. Job accused me of lying, so I got revenge. When I was 17 to 18 years old, I got my first retail job. I worked at a children's store that does ear piercings. I'm sure you all know which one. I started when I was 17, and shortly after turning 18 I was given a keyholder position. I was thrown into the position with practically no instruction, and absolutely no training. I did my best, even though I made mistakes, and I was actually doing fairly well. Time passes, I get back from a sleepover, and my mother informs me that while I was gone my grandfather had passed away. Now, I worked just 2 hours after I got the news, so I went in still struggling not to cry my eyes out at any second. The first thing I see is the store manager standing there, looking annoyed. She takes me over to a bench out in the middle of the mall and sits with me, and starts telling me about all the things I'm doing wrong, all things I hadn't been trained on, while I mostly just blankly stared at her and tried not to cry. I wasn't taking any of the information in at all, I was just too upset. Eventually she noticed and asked what was wrong, and I broke down and started sobbing, and told her. I then asked if I could go home, as I didn't think I could work efficiently with this news. She told me absolutely not, and she left, leaving me completely alone in the store. Now, for context, the store sold these stuffed animals called Beanie Boos. They also had giant versions that were about $40 to $50 a piece. I think it's been years since I worked there. But anyway, some lady walked in and decided to buy 4 of those, and was ready to pay when I told her about a store close by that sold them for a cheaper price. She thanked me and left, having not bought them. So there was my revenge for being rude and uncaring about his death. Then, shortly after, I found out from a friend and fellow keyholder that they had not only accused me of stealing a few dollar items, which I had not done, but they had also accused me of lying about my grandfather's death to get out of trouble. So, in a fit of fury, I called up the manager from before, told her I quit, shut the store down 2 hours early, and went home. Probably lost them about $500 in total sales that day, and proud of it. I know it's not much in the grand scheme of things, they make millions, but it made me feel better. I now have a picture of my grandfather hanging where I used to hang my store keys. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and we'll see you in the next video.